Hey everybody, Michael the Librarian of Magic, finding and cataloging the magical and pointing you to it. I am back here today to give my thoughts and a little review on The Mandalorian. I finally watched that after yesterday and I am ready to talk about it. I want to say here at the top that I'll be talking about the plot in a pretty general way. I'm not going to go super duper depth into a lot of details, although if you want to, there is some deep lore referenced in this show in terms of just little Star Wars details here and there, where if you're a big time fan, especially of the expanded universe and stuff like that, there's going to be little nuggets in there. I'm not going to go super deep in that way, but in talking about the plot in a very general way, this will be mildly spoilery. And once I get closer towards the end of talking about the plot of the episode and my thoughts of it, it will be necessary to spoil some of the bigger plot elements. So if you want to watch this totally fresh without any sort of spoilers whatsoever, this probably isn't the video for you. Like I said, it'll be mostly mildly spoilery, so if you don't want to be spoiled on some stuff, I will give a spoiler warning towards the end when I'm about to reveal some of the really big plot points, but most of the other stuff will be pretty general, and most people will probably be pretty unspoiled or unoffended by it. But if you're somebody who's been really looking forward to this and just want to be totally fresh, then I would probably avoid videos like this anyway, but avoid this one. With that being said, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the episode. First off, in just a really general sense, I really liked it. I thought that it was really, I mean, they spent a lot of money on the budget, and every dollar is on screen. You can really tell with the effects, both practical and computer generated. It really, really, you're watching basically Star Wars movie on TV. Um, and it looks really, really amazing. Tonally, I think it's really great. Jon Favreau as a executive producer and showrunner and writer of this particular episode, which is only entitled Chapter 1. And I believe Dave Filoni was the director on this, who is also the showrunner and sort of head brain on the Clone Wars TV show. And Dave Filoni has got a real sense of deep Star Wars lore and knows how to sprinkle that in. If you've seen the Clone Wars at all, you'll know what I'm talking about, the TV show. And he just knows how to sort of sprinkle those little tidbits in and also inject interesting humor at interesting times that feel really appropriate. And Jon Favreau also has a knack for the humor thing and is also just a good storyteller. And I think stylistically, a lot of things going on in this show get their sort of vibe from Jon Favreau's side of things as a producer. So tonally, the vibe of this show, it feels like Star Wars. You know, you're definitely getting a Star Wars story and about a bounty hunter. But it also feels sort of like you're watching a spaghetti western. It definitely has elements of being told like a western. And then also some of those spaghetti westerns were inspired by like Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai and some of those older Japanese movies. And this definitely has that sort of vibe as well. So there's a really cool like the Western style, the Western storytelling style fits really well for telling a story about a bounty hunter, and it just sort of slots right into the Star Wars universe very nicely. So just to talk very generally about what happens in this episode, the show is a story of a bounty hunter, a Mandalorian bounty hunter, which, if you are unfamiliar, the Mandalorians are sort of a race of people, a species of people in the Star Wars universe that, and at this point, which the story takes place after Return of the Jedi, but before The Force Awakens. So the Return of the Jedi's already happened, and the Mandalorians at this point are a sort of a race of people that have had a pretty bad run over the last 25 years of history at this point in Star Wars, and have had to go underground and survive by bounty hunting and other means of making money. They have sort of a similar vibe to Boba Fett from the Empire Strikes Back and the Return of the Jedi. Boba Fett actually wasn't a Mandalorian. If you have seen the prequels, you know that Boba Fett was a clone, or the son of a clone from the original Clone Army, but he wears Mandalorian armor. That's part of his backstory. Anyway, that armor was designed way back when by the Mandalorian peoples to combat Jedi and protect themselves from a bunch of other threats in the galaxy. And they were a conquering people before they were fought back and sort of pushed underground and all that stuff. Anyway, that's not necessarily germane to what this show's about, but the show's about a Mandalorian who is a bounty hunter, and you just sort of find out at the beginning of the show he's tracking a bounty, and it feels very westerny. He goes into a cantina or a saloon and tracks down a bounty and brings him back. He has a carbonite freezy thing on his ship, and he freezes the guy in carbonite and brings him back to get his money. He's getting jobs from a character that's played in the movie by Carl Weathers. I should say the Mandalorian, the main character, we never get a name for him in this first episode. He is played by Pedro Pascal. We never see him in the first episode without the helmet off. He's masked the entire time. Some people have found, have taken issue with that. I personally don't have a problem with it, considering this is going to develop over 8, 9, 10 episodes, or however long it's supposed to be. And I'm sure that there will be plenty more character development. There's not a lot of time in this 40-minute episode to really develop all that stuff, and it's fine for me for the time being that he's a man of mystery. Now, if this goes on for 4 or 5 episodes and we really don't learn that much about him, and I can't imagine that happening, then I'll maybe have reason to be a little more critical. But as it is, I kind of like that he's a little mysterious and everything. So he brings his bounty. He's getting jobs from a character that's played by Carl Weathers, who I think is named Grief Kurga. And then you see that they live in this city where he takes all of his money back to there's an underground Mandalorian enclave. So that's one interesting thing, is there are more than just one Mandalorian in this show. He's not the only one. And in the marketing, they kind of sort of made it seem like he would be, like he was going to be a real lone wolf or stuff like that. But actually, there's an enclave full of people who are creating Mandalorian armor, and they're underground Mandalorians, and there's children and all that sort of stuff. And you get a brief whisper of a backstory for the Mandalorian, which isn't really much of anything, and I'm sure it'll get elaborated on in future episodes. But that when he was a child, his family was attacked by the Separatist droid army during the Clone Wars when they took over his planet. And he has, because of that, they sort of set up very cleverly, very subtly and very cleverly towards the beginning of the episode, they set up in multiple instances that the Mandalorian does not have a good relationship with droids, because his family was... So at the very beginning, when he's taking in his bounty, he hails for a land speeder to transport him towards his ship, and one shows up with a droid for a driver, and the guy who calls the taxis, it tells him, this is the top of the line with the best driver, and he says, no, I don't want a droid. So then they switch it out and give him a land speeder with a much more clunky land speeder that's driven by a character played by comedian Brian Posehn. That was a pretty amusing cameo. Also, the bounty that he's trying to bring in is a heavily make-upped Horatio Sands from Saturday Night Live, who's in heavy makeup and does a pretty fun job as this sort of alien character. And it was kind of fun to see those two comedians there in bit roles. I'm sure it was very thrilling for them to be involved in Star Wars. Anyway, it set up there at the beginning that for some reason the Mandalorian doesn't really like droids too well, and then you find out in this very, very fast flashback that his family was attacked by the Separatist droid army during the Clone Wars period. And that's likely, I mean, they don't elaborate, but that's likely why he's got a problem with droids. So you find out that he's, contributing to the group with money and materials. He brings back an ingot of this special kind of steel called. Did I write that down? I didn't. I think it's called um, Bezoar steel or something like that. Something with a B and a Z. Bezark? Something. Anyway, Bozark. It's a special kind of steel that the Mandalorians traditionally make their armor out of. It's really impervious to like Jedi weapons and other weaponry in the galaxy. So at this point in the galaxy, at this point in galactic history, the Empire has just fallen after Return of the Jedi, and things are kind of in chaos. And there's a bunch of different currency that's being used. Imperial credits don't really hold much weight anymore. So whenever the bounty hunter is doing these jobs for bounties, he's getting paid in all these different types of currencies from the Carl Weathers character and others, where he gets like Mon Calamari currency. We see Mon Calamari flan is what it's called, and then he gets an ingot of that special steel, and there's a mixture of things going on as far as what holds weight in the galaxy currency wise at this point. Everything's kind of in a state of flux or chaos, which is also a perfect setting for a spaghetti western type of story. And then after he can't get his full payment from the Carl Weathers character, Kurga, he tells him he can get him a job, but it's for face-to-face to go find this special bounty. And he has to go get the contract personally, so he ends up going to this shady-looking place where there's these stormtroopers and a character played by Werner Herzog. And I'm not even sure if you actually get his backstory or anything, or his name. You don't really know a lot about him other than he might be a bad guy, or he might have ties to the old Empire or something. There's not much to go on, but he tells him that he has to go find this bounty on this planet, and that he'll be paid well for it, and that they give him like a tracker, like a beacon, to try to find this bounty, and he's looking for a 50-year-old mark, or 50-year-old person. So he goes off. On the rest of the episode is him going off to track this bounty. He tracks it to a planet where there's another character that's voiced by Nick Nolte. It's an Ugnaught character. If you remember, the Ugnaughts are sort of a helper guy with like a mustache from The Empire Strikes Back. And he's on this planet alone, and he has to trap these creatures called blurgs that are sort of like piranhas, with like giant piranhas with legs, and he has to ride around on one in order to get to the location where he gets guided by this Ugnaught guy to the location where the bounty is supposed to be. And then when he gets there, there's a battle droid there, an IG battle droid that's sort of just a spinning murder death top, voiced by Taika Waititi, called IG-11, and he's fighting all of these Niktos, who are another race of Star Wars peoples and creatures that have been elaborated on a little bit in the Rebel show and the Clone Wars show, and some of the, like I said, there's some deeper references that go just beyond the films. But anyway, he's fighting all of these creatures off, and they get sort of pinned down, the Mandalorian and this droid, and the droid just decides to sort of give in. I'm going to self-destruct, and the Mandalorian says, no, we can fend him off. So then they sort of fight these Niktos together. Okay, so that's where you pretty much get to in the end of the episode, really. After that, it's the very end of the episode. I'm going to get into heavy spoiler territory. I know I've been doing spoilery stuff, just sort of describing the plot of the show and what it's like. This element here is kind of where the show is probably headed next, and so if you don't want to know major plot spoiler, now would be the time to just call it good. Thanks for watching. This is your warning. Major spoilers are about to follow. Okay? If you don't want to be spoiled, you're gone now, right? Okay, good. So after they get under fire and IG-11 is going to self-destruct, the Mandalorian hops on this like giant Gatling gun, mounted gun thing, and whirls around and basically kills everybody in sight and saves them both. so that IG-11, the droid, doesn't have to self-destruct. And then they both follow he finds that IG-11 is also a bounty hunter, and he's there to try to secure the same bounty, and they decide, hey, maybe we'll split the bounty, and they both agree to that. So then they shoot down this door that's where the beacon is leading them, and they go inside, and they find that there is sort of a little pod in there, and they open up the pod, and they find that there's actually a baby instead of a person, and they think, well, I thought that the target was supposed to be 50 years old. And they find out that it is 50 years old, but it's still a baby because it is a baby of whatever Yoda's species are. And we know from the other films that Yoda lived to be well over 900 years old. So 50 years old, you could still be in your infancy stage as a whatever that species is. We've never found out in Star Wars lore, Star Wars canon. George Lucas has traditionally kept that really close to his chest about what those are. Apparently, he has worked in conjunction with the show to talk with the creators about what Yoda's species is and stuff like that. That, from what I understand, that's been he's given his input at least on that. But anyway, yeah. So they find a little Yodeling, I guess, and who knows what to make of that. I don't know if he's already 50 years old, he would have been around during the Clone Wars time. That baby would have been around during the Jedi and the Old Republic time and during the prequels. So I don't know. I don't know where it came from or who it belongs to, if it's related to Yoda or not. We're probably going to find out in future episodes. IG-11 at that point, not wanting to deal with the bounty or not thinking that it would be worth his time to split or anything like that, just wants to straight up kill the baby, and the Mandalorian summarily executes IG-11, just shoots him in the head and leaves him there, has no qualms about blasting the droid. And that was also an interesting little turn or twist for me because IG-11 was pretty heavy in the marketing and the creation of toys and merch and all that stuff, and he was in the trailers and everything, and he seems to be gone at the end of the first episode. Now, because he's a droid, they might be able to repair him or bring him back, or maybe he has the ability to self-repair. I don't know if we'll see him in future episodes or not, but as of right now, he's gone. And then from there, I can only assume the tone shifts a little bit from not only being inspired by spaghetti westerns and, like I said, Akira Kurosawa, Seven Samurai and stuff like that, but now it's got maybe a little bit of a Lone Wolf and Cub vibe. And if you're unfamiliar with Lone Wolf and Cub, it's a really popular manga series and film series from the 70s in Japan about a shogun's executioner who becomes disgraced and has to go basically on the run, and he becomes an assassin, sort of a man for hire, and he has a 3-year-old son that he has with him in tow, and it's sort of the story of this man and his 3-year-old son as they go from place to place seeking revenge for he's been disgraced because somebody lied about things that he didn't do, and he's been wanting to go around for his revenge. Now, I don't know, obviously that direct plot isn't necessarily what's going to be the plot of The Mandalorian. I'm not speculating that, but it could have a little bit of a man and baby or man and child kind of vibe to it. It's kind of hard to know at this point, but apparently now the Mandalorian has this little yodeling with him now, and that's what we know at the end of this episode. So all of that is really intriguing to me, really interesting. It's really cool to potentially be able to find out more about Yoda's species and about sort of an unexplored area of the Star Wars universe. That is really cool to me. I thought all of the acting in this was top-notch. I loved Pedro Pascal's sort of understated, mysterious way of playing it. And I love him as an actor. He was one of my favorite things about Game of Thrones. He played Prince Oberon from Dorne, and I really loved his version of that character. And also all of the other side characters. Like I said, it was great to see the comedians. Carl Weathers did a good job. Werner Herzog was really, really good, and I'm very interested to see more about that character and what his backstory potentially is and what all that's about. And there's enough here to be curious about where the show goes. So that is sort of my initial thoughts and my primer for episode one, chapter one of The Mandalorian. When chapter 2 comes out, I'll do another one of these videos. Let me know down below if this is something you're interested in, if you want it to be a little bit less spoilery or not. I don't know. Maybe I'll just do it this way. This is what I would want. So that's what I'm going to do. But anyway, thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. I really appreciate it. Thanks as always for watching these. I hope you're having a really great and magical day. I hope you get a chance to see The Mandalorian if you haven't already watched it. If you're a Star Wars fan, I think you're really going to enjoy it. And until next time, I hope you have a really excellent day. Bye-bye.